Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Thursday. The first happy Thursday in quite a while. Now, this is, of course, a very happy Thursday because we've been having a happy Thursday drought, but it's also a sad Thursday, which we will discuss at the end. But without further ado, let's get into the military improvements that are going to be taking place in Victoria 3. You guys always ask for it every single patch, please fix the military, and they are doing some things that are pretty big for making military a lot better. There's no grand overhaul, but instead this is a ton of quality of life stuff, so let's get into it. So, starting off here, hello Victorians. This isn't Happy Thursday, but let's go on. I am Lino, game design lead on Victoria 3, and I welcome you all to another Dev Diary and wish you a Happy Thursday. Let's go. We can forgive the fact that there's no capitalization on happy, which is, of course, just as all holidays should be capitalized, but we do receive ourselves a happy Thursday. Big nice. Today, we're looking at some military changes that are arriving as part of the free 1.9 update coming to you on June 17th. This guy knows how to plug. You always plug the date. You're like June 17th, always on June 17th, and then you hope that the game doesn't get delayed. The same day as our mechanics pack, Charters of Commerce releases, which will be a very, very nice overhaul to trade, which is kind of a long time coming. If you're going to focus on the economics in your game, you do want trade to be effective, but that's a thing for another Dev Diary. This Dev Diary, we're here for blood. Before we begin, as always, disclaimer, everything's subject to change and also work in progress. So obviously, Warfare has some issues which we want to address. To repeat what we've stated before, the ambitions for 1.9 is to not majorly expand on Warfare, which none of this is majorly expanding, but instead fixing various issues, but rather to fix the most egregious persistent issues. The main areas we have identified before embarking on this quest to improve warfare were too many front splits resulting in having to micro too much, definitely, and I think that the thing that they are proposing to fix this, or that they are using to fix this, might be really effective, but not comprehensively effective. Like, it will not remove 100% of front splits, but it will dramatically reduce them if it operates as they've kind of shown. Shuffling of units along the front, usually when two fronts merge, leading to them not being able to defend when the units were traveling. This is definitely a frustrating one, especially if you're fighting in, as you get close to the Arctic. Generally speaking, the states get larger and larger, so it takes a longer and longer amount of time to travel from one state location to another state location in order to push the front. And so this means you have to spend longer time not on the front, and you can get kind of blocked up. I almost said bricked up, but that's definitely not what you get. And then finally, formations teleporting home when they don't have a valid route to get there. This one is probably the most frustrating one, and the fix they have for it, I think, doesn't necessarily fix the most frustrating thing, but I do think that the front split thing fixes kind of the most frustrating teleporting thing. So let's get into these. There are, of course, other issues, e.g. user experience interface could certainly be improved in some areas. Supply should matter more. They actually are addressing supply should matter more here, but these three are the cause of most warfare feedback we see on the forums, which is probably the most frequent thing that they see feedback on. Discord and other social platforms. We read through all your posts and decided addressing these 3 points above and more based on your extensive feedback. First up, addressing the front lines and the front splitting. Talking about frontline generation here. Faced with the problems of having to micro after front splitting, we sat down and talked about some requirements and possible options. And this is kind of, in terms of Victoria 3, I like to think of things from the perspective of you have a budget. Or you have an allocated amount of resources, and from the player's perspective, they have an attention budget where you can only focus on so many things in terms of gameplay. And I think the design philosophy of Victoria 3 is that very little of that should be spent on the military. If you have to micro fronts, and you have to watch fronts, specifically because you know that a war can be lost because of a weird front split, then suddenly you have to spend a lot of your attention budget on warfare rather than on economics, which I think is very much the idea in Victoria 3, and so I do think that this is an important one to address. We knew that it's impossible to fully avoid front splitting, from happening in general, but that's okay. That was never our goal. We cared about addressing the resulting issues. One use case, and this one's really cool, is we really wanted to improve was India. Well, fronts in India. Once the princely states decide that they've had enough and declare war, we get an insane amount of front lines generated all across the subcontinent. This is due to the algorithm of how front lines are created. If we take a look at a continuous piece of land that are connected to another continuous piece of land that is owned by your enemy, and then spawns a front line between the two, basically. Well, in the case of India, this will often lead to having 10 to 15 fronts, because the princely states aren't always located next to each other. But what if we had a different algorithm, one that resulted in fewer fronts? Let me introduce you to our patented why not jump front generation algorithm. Did they really patent it? Did they? I hope to God they don't patent Happy Thursday. That should be just and available for all. Instead of requiring fronts to be along a continuous piece of land, we are now telling it to jump for some distance if it would reach another front which it can merge with. And this is huge, because this means that the thing that normally causes front spaghetti, which is like one state off to the side getting conquered or getting bricked or this type of thing, will no longer cause front splitting. In the current version we have internally, we are looking at covering one state region of a gap. We will be experimenting with a version that instead looks at a specified distance in pixels to cover some of the weirder edge cases where the state is either very small or very large. This is interesting. It'll be good to know which of these is being applied when the patch does in fact drop, so that'll be useful. But I guess we'll be able to observe it in action if we get weird front splits when we have to travel 2 states over in order to do the front. But let's get into just actually looking at the things. They're quite happy with the results, but let's take a look. We see here, this is kind of what we experience now, where there's a ton of fronts because there's a ton of different people involved, right? That's a lot of fronts, which involves a lot of micromanagement, a lot of moving, a lot of like, and very importantly, this type of situation arises also if you take a state, like let's say you can see that it looks like not all the way through, but states are occupied. So if you have a front and you're pushing this way and then you grab this state, then suddenly a new front needs to develop. And if you can't get onto that front, then someone else is going to push very, very quickly. But taking a look at the new situation that we have, there's 2 fronts. There's 2 fronts because all of these fronts off to the left have been merged into a single front. And this is huge because now it's kind of more like you're assigning your troops to a region rather than necessarily a specific front. And if something gets spaghettied based on one state being conquered, it's not going to matter. Your front will just maintain because it's jumping multiple states over. It doesn't have to be one contiguous line. And so this is treated as a single front here, which is, I think, a really, really good thing in terms of avoiding having to micro these things and also preventing exploits via like just abusing the AI's inability to play around the fact that fronts split and get jumping on fronts and breaking the AI and this type of thing. This is the biggest visible improvement we've done so far. Warfare improvement this cycle, but we have a lot more to cover. Next up is shuffling of army positions. But this is just huge. If this works dynamically and properly, because obviously they're showing us a screenshot, not a video, this type of thing, I imagine that this just like gets rid of an enormous percentage of the front spaghetti that you experience, because when you conquer a weird state where you would normally create 2 fronts, instead it just maintains the number of fronts because they can jump across one state. Taking a look, now we have front camps, which is the problem that you specifically get really, really bad next to the Arctic. So we've probably all seen armies march to the other end of the front that they were assigned to, seemingly because they felt like it. It's really annoying when, like, you're pushing in Russia, the camera flips things, and you're pushing in, like, Siberia, and then all of a sudden, your troops need to, for whatever reason, go all the way around Africa and go into Europe to continue the push. Well, in reality, this is caused because armies assigned to front camps specific locations along a front to spread them out, and it's like averaged and it gets recalculated every time you push a state. When two fronts merged or front split, we would reevaluate the front camps and armies in them assigned to a new valid front camp. So if two fronts merge, sometimes your guys would have to march all the way around continents to get to the new front. This can mean that the new camp was on the other end of the front, meaning that they'd pack up their things and start marching. And this was the critical issue. So we've taken a look at this algorithms and as well, and made some seemingly small changes which should result in much smoother gameplay experience, though. So we will have to test and see what happens. Specifically, Russia is the one where you can reproduce these issues most easily in Siberia, and so I'm guessing people will take a quick look at that. Once we get the patch, we now make it so that as long as an army is positioned in a front camp, which is still valid after the front change, they stay there. The armies were spread out evenly before, so the same distribution should make sense after front splitting merge. So now the armies will stay in a location after if the fronts merge or split, and they won't have to, run around continents. I don't know what happens when they push a front, though, in these instances, if they have to play catch-up. This can still lead to armies starting to move, e.g. because it was their front camp was invalidated because it's no longer part of the front, for example, but that is a logical reason to move. And so we will still get some chasing the front phenomena, I think, but not the really egregious move around the continent phenomena. It's hard to showcase this behavior change in images, but internal tests have been positive, and we hope that you feel the same. There's much less unintentional shuffling of armies along a front, which is the main point of the change. Next up is another big frustration point. And this one, I think that their change is actually not going to be that effective at reducing the most common frustrating situation, but let's kind of get into it. Teleporting armies. Beam me up, Scotty, the General Wasilis explained when he found himself unattached to the front in India, and sure enough, 2 minutes later he was drinking tea with the Queen in Buckingham Palace, as one does. At least that's how it sometimes works in game, until now. The issue of teleporting armies comes to be when there's no front available for a formation to go to. This can happen, for example, when a front formation is isolated in neutral territory, or the front they were moving towards being pushed into unavailable space. Now, these are the two issues that I think are a little bit less common. I think the most common time that this occurs is when you are landing. Sometimes you just get yeeted, which is, I think, the most frustrating situation. But we have here the teleporting army can't go anywhere, and it just gets yeeted back to your home territory. We've also always had some fallbacks for missing spline connections, for example, which allowed armies to simply march through terrain, though there really wasn't a path to find. And teleportation was our fallback for the worst cases, because obviously you do not want them to get yeeted out of existence. Sending them back to the home HQ is a bit of a preferable situation. But now we are refining this particular one into an actual feature, which should make it possible for armies to not teleport home again. What we're doing is to take a lesson from other titles and implement an exiled army status. Once an army finds itself in a situation where it would previously be beamed home, they now enter exiled status and have to walk or ship home. And I do not like this, because if my army gets invalidated when it is far away from any HQ I own, what's going to happen is it's going to take much longer for me to actually get to the front I want to get to, because now we have to march the entire army home, and then we have to get it all the way back to the front. And in particular, I think teleporting armies happens most often when you get front spaghettied, which I think will happen less frequently now, to be fair, because there are changes on a landing, and they just get yeeted all the way back to the HQ, and it's going to take another 180 days to land. If you get black flagged when landing, you instead of having like 180 days or 100 days or whatever it is to go from your home HQ to the landing spot, you will have to walk back to the nearest HQ, which, to be fair, might not be the home HQ. You might have an HQ a little bit closer, but you will have to walk back 100 days, and then sail back to, well, I guess you're not walking back, you're sailing back, and then sail back to the landing spot, so it'll just effectively double the time relative to you just being yeeted back to the home HQ in some circumstances. Now, in other circumstances, you getting black flagged is not as bad, specifically if you are close if you are pushing, like, let's say France into Prussia, and you somehow get bricked, you will have a very short distance to travel, and perhaps this is better than just getting yeeted in order to reach another HQ that is available to have you not exiled. But exiled armies have a few special rules here. They can march through neutral and enemy territory. They are not able to attach themselves to a front. They need to regroup in a friendly HQ first. And so in instances where a friendly HQ is really far away, this mechanic I think will actually be frustrating. But it remains to be seen if this fixes a lot of the issues that result in your armies being yeeted when if the front splitting prevents a lot of the issues with you getting yeeted when you're doing landings or far off types of warfare, maybe this is like less of an issue, but they suffer from attrition as if they were present at a front, more attrition in enemy territory than neutral, and their organization value will drift towards 0 over time. This is also quite painful, but the thing is not being able to attach to a front or reorient yourself. It's going to be really painful when you're fighting overseas. It's going to maybe not be very painful when you're fighting close to home. I guess we have to see this in action. I'm not sure that I like this, considering I think that the most egregious and frequent teleporting issues have to do around landing, and this functionally will double the amount of time that it takes to get back to kind of a landing area. But we'll have to see it in action, and we'll have to see if that is indeed as much of an issue as it is now. Once an exiled army reaches their target HQ, they lose the exile status and act like a regular formation again, and this feature is still in development. I can't show you much yet, but here's a teaser icon for what will be used across all interfaces to visualize the exiled state. We can see the exclam followed by the house. That's the big 3 out of the way, but I would like to show more today. Since I've mentioned the army organization value, I think it would be a good time to briefly mention some changes on that front. Before coming back to juicier additions. Organization, supply, and morale. And this, I think, this is probably my favorite change. Even more so than the front splitting, prevention change, which I think is a big one. I don't know if the front splitting one actually indeed makes it so that you don't have to babysit wars. This will be huge, but this one is going to definitely change things a lot, especially in multiplayer. Right now, an organization is a value whose limit is determined by the commanders in the formation used by your units. If there's sufficient commanders, it's always at maximum value, and if there suddenly isn't because an unfortunate accident happened, you pushed your commander out the window, or he tripped and fell out a bullet. He tripped and fell out the window, or fell on a bullet, or both. Porque no los dos. He fell out a window onto a bullet. Well, then the organization will drop immediately to the new target value, leaving the army shattered. Really annoying when this happens when you're trying to get in a landing. General dies, and then suddenly you have no morale. And then no organization, and now you can't really functionally do a landing. What we're doing now, because you need whatever your morale or organization limit is, you have to be at it, which means if you have organization limit of 25, you only need to be at 25, but if you're actually landing into resistance, you want to have 100 organization. What we're doing now is making organization a drifting value. It probably should have always been a drifting value. It should have been at equilibrium, meaning that when an important commander dies, the target is set to say 40, but it'll take a while to go down from 100. Which means you can replace the commander and not have to suffer the indignities of being reduced to 40 organization. Enough time for you to hire or promote a new general in their place. Organization drifting from 0 or 100 to 0 at a rate per day because the army is exiled. That is an interesting one, but we could see that we are decaying 5% a day, but that is interesting because the previous floor on organization, I don't think you could really get below 25 organization. Or maybe this is the floor that is created. if you have no generals, you'll go to 24-5 organization as your ceiling, and so I don't think that you previously would be able to be reduced below 25, but maybe I'm mistaken about some of the things that can attack your organization, but this being able to reduce you to 0% is significant. Negative effects from low organization also scale a bit differently now. When you have full organization, you suffer no consequences, of course. If you go down from 0 to 100, you'll suffer 100% of the penalties. Previously, this was set to 25%. Okay, but it's working better with 100% and drifting values. Okay. Another small change we're doing alongside this is we're adding a base command limit of 10. This means that small formations back 10 units do not require a commander to have full organization anymore. Thank you. We can just operate with our tiny little armies in terms of wanting to micro all over the place without needing to assign commanders. And also, a lot of times with these armies, you would just not generally want to... having a commander when you have a very little bureaucracy is kind of a big investment. And so it was kind of frustrating when you have like 5 to 6 armies, but you're relatively small to have to pay so much bureaucracy. This is a nice change. I do like this. Of course, you will not have the benefits of having a commander, though, which are really substantive. So if you're fighting a lot with any army, even if it's 10 or less, you still would want a commander on them. But you can also maybe have a lot of landing defense squads that run 0 commanders but have 10 troops and just be able to kind of hold down the fort versus really ineffective landings, especially multiplayer, where you have a ton of different HQs that people try and abuse by landing where you're not defending. But okay, continuing on. With regards to supply, we are making some small but impactful changes. I think this is a huge change. Previously, supply impacted morale, and instead now it affects organization. It does so by multiplying the organization target. So if the organization target of a formation, and this is important to note, organization target, not current organization, organization target. This is really substantive. Because even if you haven't decayed yet, if you have something that reduces your organization target by a lot, this will be really bad. So if the organization target of a formation is currently on 100, but the formation supply is only at 50%, the organization's target will be set to 50 instead. Okay, actually, wait. Okay, so this is just changing the target. I was thinking it was going to do something else based on previously reading it. But if the supply is low, the target of the organization will be set or capped, rather, by the supply here, which is indeed a really big deal because organization has some really substantive impacts on offense and defense. And so if you run out of supply, this means you will actually run huge offense and defense malices rather than just a morale malice. This gives supply a lot more teeth than previously rather harmless effects, minus percent offense and defense, and this is not really. So currently we still have a lot of organization here, so I wish they showed kind of the values with a bigger penalty on organization, but it does really eat into your offense and defense really substantive way. It's going to negatively affect morale recovery and recovery rate as well. And so now, raiding people in terms of convoy raiding, which we don't know how convoys are going to work anymore now because they're introducing merchant marine, and they might be getting rid of convoys, so it's unclear exactly how that's going to work. But convoy raiding, in order to destroy supply, or destroy market access, which in turn destroys supply, is going to be a means by which you can attack and go after armies. Now, I think that we actually have to recover kind of some of the ways in which supply works, or relook at some of these things, because this has just been an issue that we just haven't examined or really cared about because supply has such a small effect. Other than it's kind of annoying if you run a shortage on everything, you having that morale penalty can kind of be a little bit bad. But this is going to be a lot more substantive. But okay, all right, so much for our little tour around these values. Let's get back to some meaty stuff. I actually think that this is the meatiest thing, being able to cut supply and this type of stuff will actually be more effective, and convoy raiding will be more effective. I do think that this is pretty big. But we are going to have military access. Military access has been on our wish list for some time. It's proven tricky to get our military system to define exactly what it actually means and how we can make in a way that makes sense to us, because having discrete units force in discrete locations is better for, military access systems than having a system where you have fronts. I don't think I need to explain that that much why having military access in this game is a good idea, but let's just say it should allow more countries to conduct war without a naval invasion, which is important. The way this is, and also, previously, as a player, you could really hide behind the shield of this guy doesn't have an adjacency with me, and I know how to defend against a naval landing. Naval landings get this huge malice, so I don't actually have to worry about having to fight this guy. And so an example is maybe... let's see, what's a good one? For Egypt versus Russia. You are playing as Egypt, you're fighting Russia, and you're like, hey, you know what? This guy can't land me. I can just defend my HQs. It's not going to be a big issue. Well, now Russia can just get access through the Ottoman Empire and go and get after you anyways. And so this is going to make it so that the player is not able to hide behind the fact that there's no, access or this type of thing if the AI is intelligent about seeking access. This way was set up... The way this is set up is via a diplomatic pact that the two countries established. It's one-sided, so, for example, Belgium could grant military access to Prussia without being granted the same. Additionally, having an alliance with a country will inherently provide military access. Note the example of Prussia marching through Belgium is incidental and not a reference to any particular historical country which was involved in with German soldiers, marching through Belgium. And I was going to make a Germany joke, but I was told not to, and I'm just following orders. What I should explain through is how Prussia can actually make use of military access rights they've secured. Let's imagine we play as Prussia and find ourselves in a war with France. A silly example, I know. Now we would like to open a second front with them using a route through neutral Belgium's territory into Champagne to get to Paris. Well, with the press of a few buttons, we are able to do so. And we have this planned invasion, which is kind of like a naval invasion, but over land. Once you press the planned invasion button, you will see an interface you may know from the naval invasions already, which shows all the potential invasion targets via the sea, but also via land. Notice the extra options here for Champagne and Lorraine, which are accessible through military access to Belgium. I'm intentionally mispronouncing this, by the way. Don't correct me in the comments. Thank you. When we select Champagne, we see the panel when you select your armies. Once selected, they'll prepare for a short while. Here we see we have this invade Champagne available here for ourselves, where we can assign armies, this type of thing. These invasions via land will work almost like naval invasions, minus the boats. Now, I hope that it's also minus the penalty. It'd be strange for them to include the penalty, but the idea is you are not... Because of the way the front system works, it doesn't really make sense for you to have a front in the neutral person's territory, and what this does is effectively allow you to establish a front in another person's territory that goes through the other one. So this is kind of a very creative way of dealing with this with the system to allow military access. While preparations are ongoing, a new front is already spawned at the point of invasion so that the defender also has time to react and send forces to defend. Once prepared, the Prussian attackers will be able to start advancing on the new front. Again, the invasion icon will be fixed before release. Okay. As always, work in progress. France, on the other hand, will only be able to defend this front and cannot push into Belgium. The conditions to see this front disappear are the same for naval invasion, so after 3 failed attempts, the front disappears and the attackers return to the HQ. This is kind of an important asymmetry, though, because when you are doing a land landing through other territory, you will have always offensive battles. And in the hyper late game with some of the late PMs, offense is way better than defense. And so in multiplayer, I imagine there will be people who already having a front, and Prussia versus France is perhaps the best example, already having a front will instead try and defend on the front that they currently have and use a land landing on the front that they don't have so that they can roll all offensive battles. this is kind of a little bit of an interesting phenomenon, and I guess we'll get to see it for those of us who play multiplayer, and to some extent single player if you want to do this. Technically, like, you can have armies dedicated towards defense on one front, and then use military access through someone on another front, even if you already have a front with the country, in order to roll particular types of battles that you're looking for. Okay, but what if France wants to fight back and take the fight to Prussia? Well, they also open a second front via Belgium. When any country uses their military access via neutral country to invade another country, the enemies also gain military access to the neutral territory, to the neutral country. I think military access from the neutral country is what they're saying, but the idea is France can also land Prussia, and by land I mean land, not navy land. So keep that in mind when you're going around securing these rights. Next up, some interface improvements. We are doing some UI improvements. We've done a number of changes to the UI surrounding military, which I'd like to present to you in this section. First up, we now use a more compact mobilization window layout for formations by default. Previously, long list was very ineffective for how much space it was using and required a lot of scrolling. Here we see effects on battalions, total good consumption, and we get to see kind of a lot just up front, which is going to be a nice, lots of small buttons, making better use of the space. We do love that. We can click accurately enough. We haven't become, so old in our grand strategy game days, beyond back when we microed and clicked a bunch, that we can't just click a small button. We've added a formation tooltip. It now shows units in the formation. Additionally, we can now expose offense and defense of those in fitting places. As you can see, this is much more compact. You're getting offense and defense, some key numbers, and so, okay. Default unit selection. Also at the end, also the cost award needs to be highlighted a bit more, as it's a pretty important number. So in the military tab, you'll find a summary of your military expenses now, which is going to be nice. We can see this is generic military tab, and we've hovered over this, and it's showing us what we're spending stuff on, how expensive it is, and this will be pretty key for like evaluating how much you're spending or what type of goods you can overbuild ahead of times in terms of wars if you're expecting a really expensive war. But France doesn't have to worry about this. Look at this. They should be spending more money. Another change we're looking at is to stack all allied / enemy formations markers that are on the same front. This dramatically reduces the amount of clutter you see on screen when you're at war. Your own formations are not affected by this. Hovering over the stack allows you to see the individual groups that are summoned in it. So we see this absolutely monstrous front with all these different guys organized into this. Isn't that nice and clean? That looks so much more clean. So fresh, so clean. That's true. Next up, we see showing what's in a stack. That just hovering over a stack reveals all of this. Knowing what's exactly in a stack is not necessarily super useful, but if you're waiting for someone to decay out of a war, this type of thing, being able to know how much is on there is going to be useful. And also, hopefully this clears up, it has been for a while the case that occasionally people will be on a front, even though they're not visually on a front. They might visually be in their home HQ, but they actually happen to be on the front, and this makes evaluation of this difficult. I hope that this actually just cleans that up and makes it so that they will always be where they appear to be. That's maybe a little bit optimistic, but that was one frustrating thing. When visually on the map, a unit could be like in their home HQ, but like in terms of actual mechanics, they're on a front against you. So hopefully that fixes that as well. All right, I have one last feature Outlook I want to mention today. Outlook. We're talking about email. This feature is very actively in development, but we want to let you know that we are currently working on implementing the possibility to edit mobilization options for your formations in bulk. Thank you. This is super nice. This will work by multi-selecting any formations you want to apply this to, and then having a central editing process will apply the mobilization to all the selected formations. So you can select all your defensive squads, set them up defensively, all your like landing squads, set them up to have a lot of formation speed, and then all your pushing squads, set them up to have as many, stat advantages as possible. Here's a little outlook, all very much work in progress. You can see 3 armies selected and blue yellow lines indicating that at least 1 army has selected the option. We see here the differences showing some have different supplements, this type of thing, and that we can edit them all. So here are closing thoughts. We are, of course, looking forward to our Happy Salutation sandwich having a Happy Thursday at the end of this. We are very happy we are very happy with this set of improvements, which ended up being a bit bigger than we originally expected, and we look forward to hearing your feedback once you get your hands on it. I cannot stress enough, please stress more, that this is not marking the end of military improvements. We will continue addressing issues that aren't up to par in free updates as we've always done. And we've seen a lot of updates to the military specifically, but this front merging and ability to move fronts one state across, resulting in much less front spaghetti. I'm very excited to see just how effective this is. We would also like to come back to naval improvements, as we've done previously, but these changes are so much larger in scope that we can't tell you exactly when they're coming out at this point. There's actually one naval change that I think is really small in scope, that I think would be really easy to implement, that would dramatically change the gameplay, which is making the AI actually recruit the proper number of admirals. You actually want to have as few admirals in the Navy as possible, and have the Navy as stacked as possible, because the way that the mechanics work, so you can just change the AI, I think, but the way that the mechanics work is, if you have 100 stacked Navy, and you have 2 admirals, whenever you roll a naval battle, it will always use the amount of your Navy proportional to the amount of admirals you have. So if you have 2 admirals, you will always use 50 Navy. This means someone with a size 75 Navy with just a single admiral will crush someone with a size 100 Navy with 2 admirals, because they will just roll a 75 versus 50 battle and then a 75 versus 50 battle, and they will beat both of the navies. And this also works in a way that if you have 3 navies that are each 100 in size, and you can't use all 300 of those ships, and someone with 125 Navy, because they have a better trait, allowing you to stack more units without a malice into a Navy, this becomes a thing where, the 120 Navy could just beat this 300 stacked Navy, because you don't get to borrow, naval troops. You don't get to borrow boats from other navies and this type of thing. But the small change you could make is make it so the AI doesn't recruit a bunch of admirals. Because currently they recruit a bunch of admirals, and you can, as early as a 50 or 60 stack Navy, just crush the British fleet, even though they have hundreds of boats, because you're just hey, you have too many admirals in your 100 stack, too bad, so sad, we win. So in terms of Navy, a small change that would make the AI much more competent is making them actually recruit the proper number of admirals. But okay. Also, before I leave you, here's the outlook at the further dev diaries up until the release of 1.9. And here's where the bad news comes in. This is every other week. Terrible. Before the release of Update 1.9 in Charters of Commerce, which releases, again, June 17th. That's June 17th when you will be able to buy the Flavor Pack or the Mechanics Pack. There's a new name for it now. I think it's Mechanics Pack. But yeah, so we will be back on May 1st. Probably. We will be back May 15th, May 29th, June 5th, and June 12th, which is actually 2 consecutive weeks here, other changes plus changelog, in order to see some of the other stuff. We were expecting to see diplomatic treaties kind of today, because I think last Dev Diary they said they were going to show us treaties today, but instead we see military changes, which is, a decent change up. We're happy to see it, but here we see Dev Diaries. They even made a little infographic, which will be nice. We will be back with Alex, who will walk you through a very exciting diplomatic treaties feature on the next Dev Diary on the 1st of May, but might not wish us a happy Thursday, because Lino tends to be more consistent with that, or Hannibal on the forums. Have a good day, and see you in the comment section. Where's our second? It's happy salutations are supposed to be in sandwich format, with a happy, and then the meat, and then a happy. Okay. But those are the military changes. Really excited about this one. Possibly making front spaghetti like not a thing, which would be absolutely fantastic in terms of the attention budget of the player not needing to babysit fights, although we might babysit fights anyways just because we're used to it, even if it's no longer necessary. And also very excited for supply to matter a whole lot more. I think we scrolled past it, but supply mattering a lot more is going to be pretty substantive as well. If it gives significant offense-defense penalties, this will allow strategies where you actually attack the convoys, and convoys mattering, to be a little bit more robust. But that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, have a happy Thursday.